Hey guys, Natasha Tessier here. Thank you for tuning in. Today I have a special guest, moved here from California. We're going to dive into what she loves and what she hates, and if she has any regrets or anything like that. I think she'll be really honest with us. So if you're thinking about moving from California and you want to hear someone's personal experience, stay tuned. Okay, so you guys, I want you to meet Tara Collins. Tara, remind me how long ago you moved here and from where?
I arrived with the four kids in October of 21, so not quite 2 years.
Okay.
And I moved here from Riverside County, California, but I grew up in Orange County, California.
Okay.
My husband arrived 2 months prior to me in August because he got a job that started like 2 weeks after he got offered the job. So he arrived sooner than us.
Okay. And so when you were coming here and we went looking at houses, I remember we were looking in Bentwater. And what made you pick like Montgomery? And, I know you chose Wood Forest. Do you have regrets with that? Kind of walk me through that process.
Well, we chose the general area. He got a job offer in Houston. He knew he'd be able to work from home part of the time, but we weren't sure how much. So we
Okay.
did want to be commutable to Houston, but it was very important to me. The main reason we wanted out of California was for our kids. We didn't feel like it was the place we wanted to raise them. We have four kids. Our oldest is now 11 and our youngest just turned 6. So I loved California growing up. I grew up in a wonderful area, but it's not the area I grew up in.
Yeah.
So when he got the offer for Houston, I told him, I'm going to find us the most conservative area with the best schools and hopefully close to some fun stuff, whether that be a lake or whatever. And that's how I zeroed on the Montgomery area because those are the things that were important to us at the
Yeah.
time.
Okay. So
Um,
talk me through like you have kids in the public schools in Montgomery ISD, correct?
That is correct. My kids had been previously homeschooled only, and that was from well before COVID. It was a decision because I did not want our kids in school in California, certainly not public school, and private school, which I would have loved as an option, was so cost prohibitive, even though both my husband and I had really well paying jobs in California. He was a police officer at the time. A detective actually, and I was at one point a prosecutor, and then did private criminal defense for a while as well. So when we started looking to move, I knew the kids, I wanted the option of them being in school if that's what they were excited about and if I felt comfortable with it. And we found Montgomery area because it was highly rated with the schools, and specifically the school that they've been at, Lone Star, which I cannot say enough great things about, is a Leader in Me school or a lighthouse school. So they emphasize the 7 habits of highly successful people from Covey, tailored down obviously to their age and grade level. But it's a school that focuses not just on academics, which I've been thrilled with. My fifth grader, who started at the end of October as a fourth grader, just finished fifth grade with an academic presidential award, honor roll. I mean, things I was so worried, having come from a homeschool perspective,
Yeah.
that either his academics wouldn't be great or just that it would be difficult. And they all did amazing. And I know it's because of the school that they were at and the people at that school. So I
Yeah.
was really happy that we did that. And you were invaluable because I know when we were looking at school at homes and stuff, I specifically wanted Montgomery ISD, which you knew and were great, and that was all we looked at. But I know you had some experience with Lone Star and had talked to me about it, and that really helped me zero in specifically
Yeah.
on homes that were in that district.
Yeah, I used to like my sister-in-law has always homeschooled, and I'm like, but obviously when our country changed and schools, I mean, a lot has happened in 3 years in this country. I think
Absolutely.
everybody would agree. Now, I'm like, told my husband, I'm like, if I had a newborn, I mean, I would consider that, but I always tell people like I feel like where we are, it's not perfect, but they're
Mhm.
still trying. I mean, there's churches on every corner. There's In God We Trust in our schools. They're trying to hold what, and to me, what America was founded on, in the schools. It's not, I mean, and obviously there's different walks and different people and all that stuff, but it's just so different from my clients coming from California and what they're experiencing in their public schools.
Oh, absolutely. My kids, like I said, were never in public school, and that's because we chose not to have them there. But the main reason we wanted out of California, I hear a lot of people talk about like financial reasons, and you can get more for your money here, at least when it comes to the house itself. And that's great. But when I hear people say that's why they're moving, I'm like, oh, please don't come to Texas then if it's only for financial reasons, because we moved because of the culture and the politics and the lack of freedom in California. When in the last 3 years, with all the stuff that happened, California changed drastically. We wanted out even before that happened, but that was the tipping point for us. And coming here, I feel like it's very similar to how I grew up. It's kind of the culture, and you know, I am strict. I know I'm not the norm. My kids don't have technology. They don't have cell phones. They don't have video games. You know, they play outside and they swim and they
Awesome.
play games with each other and stuff. So I think that's also a lot easier to do here, because post COVID in California, I mean, there's still masks, there's still things that are closed down, there's still restrictions. And that was a year ago from visiting. I went back in June of 22, and it's crazy to me, because that was our main reason. And that was kind of why we decided specifically on where we did in Montgomery with Wood Forest. I don't know if you remember, but I absolutely fell in love with a house in Bentwater, and it was
I would still
close to
remember
the
the
lake.
house. It was
Yeah,
quaint, cute, and charming.
yes.
I remember all of it. And I remember, I mean, I can't steer as an agent, but being in Wood Forest at the time, I was like, oh my gosh. And, but I think it was good. You took the time, you went back and forth, and came to your
Yeah.
answer. And I think now from what I see on your street and how talk about how quickly your kids. So I think a lot of people are like, well, they have I mean, we moved here, my daughter was in 5th grade, and girls can,
Uh-huh.
a little bit more difficult on the front, and nothing. I mean, welcoming, invited to things.
Oh,
I mean, it was like we
absolutely.
never skipped a beat.
Oh, I agree. I agree 100%. Absolute favorite thing about Texas, and I would say this to anyone, is the people. They are so welcoming and so nice and so kind. I had great friends in California, but people in general, just people, are not what they are here. We moved here, and the first day, I had a neighbor from way down the street walk up and was like, "Oh, you must be the new neighbors." And I was super nervous because, you hear horror
Like,
stories or
what
people
are you
talk
doing
like,
here?
yeah, like, why are you here to just like check me out and make sure? But
Are
because
you
some people will talk
stalking
about
me?
like, no, nobody wants Californians or whatever, but we didn't have that experience at all. I loved that house I fell in love with in Bentwater as far as floor plan and the house. But even going back now, and there's some things about our house that I'm like, ugh, but the neighborhood we ended up in and the amenities and the things for the kids, I would not change in a heartbeat. And that was the thing. We drove down the street, and I remember when we left Bentwater, my husband was like, "There's no kids," and I'm like, "They're in school," and he's like, "No, there's no evidence of kids," and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh gosh, I
he
think
is
he's
right.
right."
I mean,
And then,
it's changing,
yeah,
but it's an older crowd for sure. I mean,
yeah.
Wood Forest, you have kids literally almost in every single house of some sort.
Yeah, we have just a quick calculation, like 22 kids I can think of that are all at school with my kids, and they're all from my just finished kindergartner's age, to my getting ready to go into 6th grader, and they made friends so quickly. The kids were so welcoming, the parents were. Our second week here, my oldest came to me and was like, "I want to play lacrosse," and I'm like, "I don't know if they have that for kids," but he definitely found his tribe between school and the friends he's made, and all 4 of them, and then his lacrosse and the friends we've made through that too. I wouldn't change it for the world. Like, they love, and I ask them all the time, "Are you glad we moved here?" Because initially we left all our family. We had nobody
Yeah,
here in this area. My sister's 3.5 hours away. Luckily, my parents followed us, and they're now here, as you know, in April Sound.
they're
Even
in a
before,
perfect spot too, just for
oh, and they,
on the lake, and
oh,
so cool. A
they
lot
love
of
it too.
people do
They
that.
love it.
They're kind of walled in April Sound, and the kids are more in the kind of kid communities, but
Yeah, and they love it. But I would ask them all the time, because they were very close to my parents. Like, "Are you happy here? Do you wish we were still in California?" And never all of them have always said, "Oh no, we like it here. We like Texas. Can we just go visit the beach and visit Auntie in Huntington Beach?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we can do that."
so tell me, do you have, like, speaking of, like, obviously the heat right now is really intense,
It
but
is.
like, do you have regrets, or what would you say like are the biggest cons, like realistically, for somebody considering stuff to think about, that it's like, yeah, this was an
Okay.
investment for us.
I would say one thing to be aware of, people coming out here, especially if you're doing it simply like from a financial perspective versus other considerations
Mhm.
is that while money does go further out here, in terms of you can get more home for your money than you could back in California. And you can also find anything you want. Like if you are looking for something that's kind of more rural and out of the way with a little bit of space, you can find that and it be affordable. If you're looking for something on the lake, like on the lake, you can find it and it's affordable. So no matter what you're looking for, like pre-planned community with great amenity, whatever, you can find it. And the house itself will be more affordable. But I think people that don't look into it further are going to be a little bit surprised by like property taxes, for example, and the way they're structured and how they can go up. There are ways around, legal ways around that, I should say, as far as like exemptions for homestead, or if you're over 65, or the veterans, and different things like that. But I do think it's something people should be aware of. I think people think, oh, it's cheaper in Texas, and come here, and then don't realize your home insurance and your auto insurance, for example, are noticeably higher here than they were back in California. So
And
I
I
think,
think just with the property taxes, like I've done several videos on that, but like it kind of depends on what income you were making in California and what percentage of that was going to, I mean, I have very wealthy clients that are 12 and 13%, so that's
mhm,
a bracket there, I mean, they're going to get their taxes each state one way or the other,
yeah,
but it's
absolutely.
a balance because if your income is a lot lower and your property, you move into a property tax community that's really high, it's kind of like, oh, well, now, you got to find what works. You can get low 1.7 and you can get 3.5. So yeah, that's a
Absolutely.
big thing to discuss. And I do a lot of people where I'm like, okay, let's get on a search of 2 and under. If that's the most important thing, at 2% or less, then that's what we have to go to, a little bit more established. And I talk about the newer than you don't get all the amenities though. So,
No,
like,
and
we
I
moved to
agree.
Crown
And that,
Oaks and I mean, we have a lake, we don't have walking paths, we don't have, but my kids are older. When my daughter like felt like she was in Disney World at Wood Forest. I mean, like when we said we were
yeah.
moving, she's like, wait, what? So I think that's good. It's a pro and con. It's not every place has it all.
I agree. And I think it's important for someone moving to be responsible and look into that. I mean, I'm sure you saw, but my list of like, this is what this community has, and this is its
Yeah.
property rate, and this is what this has,
We're so
and
organized.
balancing that. So I think that if you're like, I had never been to Houston in my life. I met you, we went around and looked at houses for 2 days and then made an offer on the third. So it was a little of a whirlwind.
Yeah.
But prior to coming, I made sure that I had narrowed down as best I could, having never been here, like which areas I wanted to at least look at and then narrow from there. And you need to base it on what's important to you. So if your kid's school and having certain features or certain culture at the schools and what's important, then you need to look only at homes in that school district. Don't
Yeah.
get sidetracked by the
So
gorgeous
much.
house 2 blocks over,
Yes.
you know? So I would say the biggest cons or things to be aware of, I would say, is just the property tax and what it is where you are, because it is so different as you indicated. And then just that certain things are more expensive, like the homeowner's insurance, auto insurance, obviously. And then the one other thing that I was a little bit not even necessarily concerned or disconcerted about, but just surprised by is, and it's actually a pro and a con, is the like regulations or not lack of oversight, that's not quite the right term, but there's so much more freedom out here. So aside from an HOA, if you want to put a shop in your backyard, you can. If you want to put a pool in, you don't have to ask anybody. My brother-in-law started putting a pool in around the same time as us, or actually my best friend started the process right when we did, and her pool was done like 5 months after ours. Ours was done in like 30 days. And it's gorgeous and perfect and no problems. But I do think when you're looking for contractors or someone to do something on the house or anything, that because there's not so much less
Restriction.
lights and yeah,
Yeah.
less restrictions out here,
Yeah, and
that you just need to be
licensure.
careful that you research,
Yes, I agree. Because I mean, anybody can own a pool company here.
Yes, and that's the thing.
Say, I'm
As long as
interested
you,
in pools. Here we are.
yeah, and
A
I
lot of
found
things that
too,
don't require, which is good. It's not so restrictive, but I agree. You have to be careful on who you're hiring and all that stuff.
yeah, and like the lake, because we've been out on the lake quite a few times now. We finally got our boat out here. Um,
Awesome.
and some of the, like in California, you have to like go in a certain direction for safety, and you can't, like, there's certain rules on the lake, and I'm like, oh Lord, it's the Wild West out here. Like, they just do whatever they want, which is, I'm like, we're on a lake, like, it's water, let's be safe,
That's
and
and we
but so
won't
that's
go on Conroe on a Saturday morning, not in the summer, because there's just
right.
so many people. We try to find an afternoon and on a Tuesday afternoon or something or Sunday afternoon. I mean, it is, and it's a dangerous lake if people, are out there and there's too many and all that stuff. So
Right.
that's true.
Right, and they're not all going in the same direction, or I mean,
I-
like, I remember we had to take, like, a boat license, and I'm not advocating for boat licenses
Yeah.
necessarily in Texas, but I will say that, like, we would go on a lake and everyone kind of would go the same direction, felt very orderly and safe, and we come out here, my kids are like, "Why are they just cutting straight across the
Yeah.
middle?" And I'm like, "I don't know, they're not
Yeah.
supposed to do
I
that."
didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's true. It's a pro and a con because I had somebody say, can you give me the certificate of when they replaced their roof from the county? And I'm like, what? I'm not
What are you
understanding.
asking for?
And they're like, no, like when they filed with the county to do the roof. And I'm like, we don't, like, if it's not septic, which I mean, obviously you understand septic, people are required to have their
Mhm.
septic maintained with the county, or I mean, you're fine because if somebody doesn't keep up their septic, that's gross. But other than that, there's no, like, you don't get permission to like get your roof worked on or something. And
Yeah,
people are shocked. They're like, what do you mean? You don't have to, but at the same time, things happen so quickly. Like I have so many
yeah.
clients in California and like two right now. One has a rental property. The tenant won't get out, even though they've been
Oh,
trying since May
yeah.
to get out. And it's residential and he's using it for commercial. And she literally cannot, and she wants to use her 1031 and she can't get the tenant out. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't get him out? Like, doesn't the
Yeah.
here that you can't do that?
My cousin recently moved to Virginia from San Diego area, and her husband owned a lot of rental properties. And initially, they had thought they would keep them because it's good income, but just because of like the tenant rights out there, which are insane,
Mhm.
especially from a former attorney's perspective. Like, it's crazy. But they ended up selling absolutely everything and ended up investing in rental properties, like a lot out in Tennessee, and I
Yeah.
think some in Virginia as well. But it wasn't worth the rent they could get, which was astronomical, was not worth the hassle and just the problems out
Well,
in
they don't
California. So
protect the
they've sold
landlord.
everything.
Yeah, so the landlord has no protection there.
No,
So
no, they don't.
even though they're doing things illegal and whatever, oh, I signed this that they'll get out, they don't get out. And then I have another one that was supposed to close. They've already set up an Airbnb. They wanted to like live here for a month, just to make
Mhm.
sure, because it's a big decision that they're getting for the right place. So they have like their pods and everything. She called me yesterday crying because they came to do the final walkthrough. They left all day. They never showed up for the final walkthrough. Now they're trying to say that, they want the plumbing checked out for a third time and they have the lender kind of, and I think, I don't know if they're trying to back out, but like you can't just like walk away here. Like, and like when you
Yeah,
buy a house, you get the house that day. Like the funding goes through within an hour or two, and that's your house. Like we're done. Back there,
right.
it's like, oh, well, we're in line to get recorded for 4 days. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I see the restrictions as being pros and cons to what you're saying.
I do. And mainly, like I said, if I had to pick between the two, I would absolutely pick less restrictions like here. It's just a few of them caught me off guard, or
You
a
don't
few
want
of
to
them
get
I was
run
like,
over in your boat.
yeah, I'm like, I wouldn't mind a little restrictions on, I wouldn't mind some rules on this lake. But in general, I still think, and I would tell anybody, I do, that hands down, I think the biggest pro that Texas has for it, at least in this area, although now that Colt was playing select lacrosse, I traveled more around the state too. So,
Yeah.
but is absolutely the people. I think that whether you're dealing with people in stores and in a service industry, or you're dealing with your neighbors or people you meet at school, people are just so warm and welcoming
Yeah.
and genuinely interested. Like, it's when someone asks you a question, they actually want your answer. They're
Yes.
not already like 5 miles, and that is definitely something different from California. And it's also a much more relaxed atmosphere out here. It's almost like, I was talking to my dad about it yesterday because I told him I'd be talking to you, and he's like, I feel like in California it's like people wake up mad
Yeah.
and you encounter them throughout the day, and whether you add to it or not, is one thing. He's like, but here you have to make someone mad. Like, they're not just walking around stressed out and angry and ready to lash out. Like, they're people are more relaxed. And I do think, and this is absolutely a pro, that it's a little bit more of a simple lifestyle, in the sense of, like, we go to dinner with our neighbors and we spend time with our friends, and it's, all of the garage doors in the neighborhood are open, and the kids are going out. Not so much this past few weeks, because the heat is, I mean, it's up there lately, but normally, all the garage doors are open and all the kids are out front and parents are sitting out front and interact. And in California, you drive home from work, you open your garage, you drive into the garage, and then you shut the garage. And that's like, I didn't, in the 7 years I was in the neighborhood prior to moving here, I did not meet any of my neighbors pretty much until we were moving out. Whereas here, the first day, I mean, literally the first day I was out front, like, moving sweaty boxes and stuff, I had multiple neighbors stop by to introduce themselves or to drop off, wine or whatever it was. And I was like, how do I know my neighbors better in a month than
Yeah.
I did in 7 years? And
Some of my
that's
clients are like, "They're bringing me cookies. Is that okay?" Like, yes. They're not
yeah.
poisoning your cookies. They're just being nice.
Right. And it's true. Like, they're just genuinely nice and interested people. And that's amazing. And the culture here, just between the freedom and the patriotism and the absolute love of Texas. I mean, I've never seen, like, it's not like that in California. Like,
They're
there's
very
no,
prideful of their state.
yes. And I think that's awesome. And I think it's amazing. And it kills me when my second, or my third, actually, he's going into third grade, but he knows all the Texas facts. He's like, Mom, did you know like, whatever it is,
On
like,
it and all that, yeah.
yeah. And he's like so proud of it too. And I love that. Like, there's just the pride, both state and in the country, and the values out here, and like you talked about, there's so many churches and stuff, and that's absolutely true. You can walk into any cafe or restaurant and you'll see, a Bible verse on the wall,
Yeah,
or you'll hear Christian music playing.
yeah, it's cool.
And I think that's amazing. I love that. I know everyone's different and might have different things that they're looking for, but I love that. And that's one of the reasons I love living here. I would not go back to California to live for anything. I absolutely love it here. Last week we went to not Lake Creek, Crystal Beach for the first time. And I'd had friends be like, oh, it's, the water's brown. It's not like California. It's not this and that. The kids had a blast. They loved it. Like,
I don't care.
I'm like, the beach is not enough. The weather's a little bit daunting sometimes, but I mean, I think once you have someone you can ask, like, hey, clothing wise, like, what are you doing to keep yourself most comfortable?
Yeah,
I did have to buy a couple of different, like, material wise
yeah,
shirts or dresses or
yeah.
something, but it's
Sweating all the
not, I
time.
mean, yeah. And it's not like houses here don't have air conditioning. So on the super miserable days, just kind of plan to be inside most of the day.
Yeah, or you
But
just in
even
the pool or in the lake or at the ocean. I mean, it's
exactly.
better than like 5 months of snow where you can't go out. It's just you don't
Yeah.
wanna be standing outside at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
No, and that's, yeah, here it's like the hottest part of the day is like 4 o'clock. I found, I'm like, why is it so hot at 4? I'm used to it like noon. But yeah, the weather, I hear people talk like, oh, I don't know if I could take the weather. It is not that bad. Not that it doesn't get hot, I don't mean that. And not that it doesn't get humid, because it does.
Yeah.
But I've never felt like, oh, I can't go out in this, it's too much. Like, it's just weather, like, what's
I
more
know.
important to you,
I
weather or the other stuff?
Yeah,
So,
totally. Well, thank you.
but
Do you have anything else to add? You've been awesome. I think this will be helpful.
oh, good. No, not a problem at all. I know I pulled my parents a little bit too, and that was the first thing they said was the people also. So I was like, oh, okay, I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, and
So,
I mean, I love the area. I love the schools. It's not perfect, but my kids are all having really good experience. Elementary, junior high, high school. It's been good. I love it.
yeah,
And I feel like people are always watching out for each other.
mhm.
It's just a very friendly, family friendly environment to raise kids in. I remember my sister's kid from New York came down and the lady at the grocery store was like, "Oh, sweetie, have a blessed day." And my niece was like, "Why is she talking to you like that?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, why would she tell you to have a blessed day?" I'm like, "Well, but
Well,
it's so
why
foreign."
not? But it is. It
Yeah.
is. No, it absolutely is. And I, even in California, I was trying to raise my kids with manners and I wanted them to have certain values and stuff.
Yeah.
So for them, it wasn't as a huge of a difference coming here because they were all, I mean, they didn't say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. They would say yes, please,
Yeah.
because ma'am and sir aren't really a thing there. But I was like, oh, I hope they're not. I hope they're not. My kids don't come off as rude from having been raised out there. Luckily, they didn't. But it's funny, like they picked up the yes, ma'am. Like they
Oh,
say
yeah.
it to me, and
So
I'm
many
like, who are you
people
talking
manage.
to?
No, I love it. The manners is
Yeah,
really cool. Yeah.
I do. I love just the
Authority.
respect and the
Yeah.
yes, respect and that. And you know what? That is one thing I forgot about. Just how veteran friendly it is out here in Texas. There's so many different things. I think that if you are a veteran, it's definitely worth looking out here if you're looking to relocate because they are so supportive of the veterans out here. And that was something that I hadn't really looked into. It wasn't something I thought of as important, but Mike is a veteran. And having gotten here, I was surprised by and impressed. And I think that's something
Respect you
for
for
people.
serving.
Exactly.
They have Veterans Day at the school and they do all sorts of stuff. Tell me too, like, have you liked like the 4th of July parades and the different things in your community that have been so fun for the kids?
Oh my gosh, yes. There's always something, whether it's like Food Truck Fridays or it's the 4th of July parade, or I mean, they have something all the time at our community area and the kids love it. And all of it's so fun. Like whether it's they have like the face painters or they have the Christmas stuff going on,
It's
both
so
up at Pine Market. They love it. They love everything. We did end up with, an obnoxious golf cart that has like lights and music. I mean,
course you did.
it's something, and and it's huge because there's 6 of us. But like,
Yeah,
and
that's
it's so funny. I
fun.
told my husband, I'm like, I'm getting so old because I love whether the kids are with me or it's just me, just getting on the golf cart and like just driving around the neighborhood because it's so beautiful. And that's something I love out here. It's so green here in Texas. In California, it's so congested and so compacted with people that there's not a lot of open spaces. Like you have to go to a park to find the greenery, whereas here you just drive down any of our main streets and there's trees and flowers and natural, just beautiful like nature around you. And our neighborhood, specifically Wood Forest, has done an amazing job of maintaining their trees and their plant life, which is nice. It's not like they came in and just dozed everything and built houses. They did keep some of the integrity of the
I love it.
area.
The
And
paths.
I love
Yeah, it's awesome. Very
and
awesome.
the traffic out here is so much better. I know I've heard people talk like, oh, it's getting so trafficy, and I have had to drive to Houston a number of times now, and in the city, yes, it's traffic, but one thing I will tell anybody moving from like California, if you're going somewhere in Texas and it's 30 minutes away, you're driving for 30 minutes and it's a pretty drive. Like
Yeah,
it's
you're
not
not
30
sitting
minutes.
for 25 minutes and driving 2 miles.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you do that. Like people think it's an exaggeration, but it would take us 20 minutes to get out of the neighborhood just at the stop sign at our old house, just to get on the road. So
Yeah,
here I'm
around
like, yeah,
here, it's like that that 1488 Fish Creek, Egypt area at 5
yeah,
o'clock. And they're like, well, how bad is it? And I'm like, well, you might wait through like 2, maybe 3 light cycles. And they're like, that's not traffic. So I'm like,
yeah,
well, that's
I
all you're
know.
gonna hit out here. Now going into the city might be different, but out here, that's really the
Right.
only congested area.
Yeah, my best friend came out at Christmas time this year and I was like, oh, there's so much traffic right now because we were headed out towards like the Woodlands area. And she's like, you haven't been here long enough to think that this is traffic. And
Yeah,
I'm like, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry. But she was like, this is not traffic. I'm like, you're right. It's not.
that's awesome.
but
Well,
we
thank
love
you
it.
so much. I'll get this posted on the YouTube channel and have people reach out. If somebody wants to chat with you, would you be willing to chat with them about?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
Oh,
figured.
absolutely. Absolutely. Phil, if someone reaches out to you and wants to talk to me, just give them my cell phone number. I don't have a problem with that at all. So
You're so
I just think, oh, thank you. No, I'm so grateful. I found you actually just randomly searching like Montgomery and Wood Forest, and saw like a video and was like, she seems really nice. And I think she gets what's important to me. Like, I think she's going to be fine if I say, this is what I'm looking for and this is why. And you were so helpful. And obviously my parents, you helped them immensely too when they moved out here and stuff.
They were the
But
ones that were like, Natasha, we need you to go knock on this door and try to buy that house that's not on the market. And I'm like,
yes,
let's go, let's do this.
and and there they are. Now they're in that house and they love it. But yeah, no, we are so grateful that we found this area and that you helped us steer us. Cause I did not, I'm just really glad my kids ended up at Lone Star. And I know I had been kind of like, oh, okay, as long as it's Montgomery District. And I have nothing bad to say about Montgomery District in general, but Lone Star is phenomenal. Just the teachers, the people, the kids, like the lack of problems that have been there. And like you said, nowhere's perfect. And I don't have, rose-colored lenses thinking that it is, but I would definitely take this not perfect over California's not perfect any day. So.
All right. Well, thank you. I hope you have a blessed weekend and we'll chat with you soon.
Thank you. Okay. Absolutely. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.